The landlord never mentioned the deadbolt on the pantry door when I moved in. I assumed it was a quirk of an old building, a strange DIY project from a previous tenant. But at 3 a.m., as I watched the brass latch slowly turn from the outside, I realized that lock wasn't there to keep people out of food. It was there because the person before me knew that something was already inside. The apartment was a fourth-floor walk-up in a building where the walls were thick enough to hide a scream, and the neighbors were the kind of people who minded their own business. It was exactly what Sarah needed: cheap, quiet, and close to her night shift at the hospital. For the first 3 weeks, the only sound she heard was the hum of the refrigerator. The pantry was a small, walk-in space just off the kitchen. It was deep, dark, and smelled faintly of cedar and old dust. Because she lived alone, Sarah never felt the need to use the exterior deadbolt. She left the door ajar so her cat, Jonesy, could get to his water bowl inside. The first anomaly happened on a Tuesday. Sarah came home at 4 a.m., dropped her keys on the counter, and noticed the pantry door was shut. Not just closed, but the deadbolt was thrown. She paused, her hand hovering over her phone. She lived alone. She hadn't touched that lock since she moved in. She eventually convinced herself the building had settled at a strange angle, causing a heavy door to swing and the latch to click. She unlocked it, checked the small space, and found nothing but cereal boxes and cat food. 2 nights later, she woke up to a sound that didn't belong in a quiet apartment. It was a rhythmic metallic clicking. Click, slide, click. It was coming from the kitchen. She stayed under the covers, her heart hammering against her ribs. She didn't call out. In real life, you don't ask who's there, you listen. The clicking stopped, followed by the heavy, unmistakable thud of the pantry door closing. Then silence. She waited until sunrise to leave her bedroom. The kitchen was exactly as she had left it, except for one detail. There were 4 cans of soup lined up on the counter. They had been taken from the pantry and arranged in a perfect, straight line, spaced exactly 2 inches apart. Jonesy, usually vocal and hungry in the mornings, was nowhere to be found. She found him 3 hours later, tucked into the furthest corner of her bed, his eyes wide and fixed on the bedroom door. She called the landlord, who sent a locksmith to change the front door tumblers. The locksmith was a man in his 60s who didn't say much until he saw the pantry. He pointed at the exterior deadbolt and asked how long she'd been leaving it unlocked. When she told him she never used it, he stopped working, looked in the eye, and told her that in 40 years, he'd only seen locks like that in houses where people were trying to keep something from getting out of a room, not into it. That night, Sarah didn't go to work. She stayed home. But she didn't stay in the bedroom. She sat in the dark living room with a heavy flashlight, watching the kitchen. At 1:45 a.m., the floorboards in the hallway, the ones nowhere near the pantry, groaned under weight. Then she saw it. The pantry door, which she had personally locked with the exterior deadbolt earlier that evening, began to vibrate. Something was pulling the handle from inside, testing the strength of the lock. The vibration stopped. A second later, a thin, yellow piece of paper was pushed through the gap at the bottom of the pantry door. It slid across the linoleum floor like a tongue. Sarah didn't move. She didn't breathe. She watched as a second paper followed. Then a third. When the scratching started, it wasn't coming from behind the pantry door. It was coming from above her. She looked up and saw the rectangular panel of the attic crawl space, located directly above her sofa, slowly being lifted. In that moment, the geometry of the apartment finally clicked in her mind. The pantry wasn't just a closet. It shared a wall with a ventilation shaft that ran from the attic to the basement. The man hadn't been breaking into her apartment. He had been living in the crawl space, using the pantry as his way to enter her living area when he thought she was asleep. The reason the deadbolt was on the outside wasn't because the previous tenant was crazy. It was because they had realized too late that something was coming down from the ceiling and using the pantry as its dressing room. She grabbed her keys and her cat and ran. She didn't look back to see who was climbing down from the ceiling. She didn't wait to see the face of the person who had been lining up her soup cans. The police found a sleeping bag, 3 weeks' worth of trash, and a collection of Sarah's hair ties in the crawl space directly above her bed. But the most disturbing discovery was the pantry door itself. When they examined the inside of the door, the side that faced the dark shelves, they found hundreds of deep vertical grooves carved into the wood. They weren't tool marks. They were fingernail scratches. And they weren't at the bottom of the door. They were all located at the very top, as if whoever had been in there was trying to climb the walls to get back into the ceiling before she came home.